Kelim Perigimel Mishnah Zayin. We're carrying on with Kelim, Klicheres, having layers for protection on the outside, and determining whether these layers are actually bottled to the Kli, become part of the Kli, so that if the Keli becomes Tomei because a sheretz, for instance, was nitla in the avir of the Klicheres, would the Oichlin Mashkin touching the outside, touching the layer around the outside, become Tomei as if they would have touched the actual outside of the Kli? And the Mishnah says, Mechem. Mechem is a kettle. Shetiploi b'chomer uv'charasis. You smeared a layer of chomer, is mortar or cement. It's a very thick, sticky substance. Charasis is less sticky. Charasis is a type of clay. And the Mishnah is making a difference. Hanegea b'chomer tomei. If the tipple, the layer around the outside of the Kli, is the cement, the mortar one, because that's very thick and very sticky, therefore it becomes part of the Kli Cheres, and therefore touching the Chomer on the outside would make the Oichlin Mashkin, which touch it, Tomei. Uvacharasis, however, the layer of Charasis around the outside of a Mechem is not so sticky, and because it's not so sticky, it crumbles, and therefore it's not bottled to the Kli, and is not considered to be part of the Kli, and therefore anything Oichlin Mashkin touching the outside of the Kli Cheres, which is Tomei, those Oichlin Mashkin remain Toher. The next case, kumkum. Kumkum is an urn. It's not a kettle. It's after one boils the water in a kettle, one pours the hot water into the kumkum so for it to stay warm there. Shinikev, and it's got a hole in it. Vasoi b'zefes, and you repair the hole with pitch, which is a tar-based substance. There's a few ways of learning this Mishnah. We'll learn the way of the Chazon Ish, which is in a way the simplest way, is that the hole we're talking about is actually not a hole which makes the Kli Cheres Toher, just a small hole. And the Kli is still Tomei. But the main thing is you repair the hole with pitch. Rabbi Yossi Metair, and again there's different ways of learning this. The way we're going to learn is that Rabbi Yossi is not Metair the whole Kli Cheres. The Kli Cheres is able to be Mekabel Tumah as it was before. We're talking about somebody who touches the Kli Cheres is Tomei, and somebody touches the outside, that drop of Zephys, which is blocking up the hole. Does he become Tomei? Does the Oichlin Mashkin, which touch the drop of Zephys on the outside, do they become Tomei? So basically, he's Matar the drop of Zephys. Why? She'ena yochel lekabel is a chamin ketzonim. Because the kumkum is primarily made for chamin, for hot water, and the Zephys is not made for hot water. In fact, the Zephys would be ruined if hot water got to it. Therefore, it's not called a proper repair. It's not bottled to the Kli. And touching Oichlin Mashkin, which touched the drop of Zephys on the outside, when the Kli Cheres is Tomei, this Oichlin Mashkin stay Toher. And the Chazon Ish has a suffix when it says Rabbi Yossi Metair. Do the Chachamim actually argue? He's not sure. So remember, the word Matai doesn't mean he's Matai. The Kli means it's a word of Chibur. The drop of Zephys is not Tomei if the Kli Cheres is Tomei. V'chein oyoyim, and Rabbi Yossi said the same thing, Bichlei Zephys. There's two ways of learning this Bichlei Zephys. The Rambam learns this is a din on its own. Klei Zephys, you make a whole keli out of pitch. Rabbi Yossi is going to say this keli is not Makabel Tumah. Why? Because it cannot stand the heat. The Rambam learns like this because the Rambam holds that Zephys has a din of eitz. The Rambam holds that anything made from trees or plants, which includes tar and pitch, has a din of eitz, and therefore under din of kli eitz, this should be able to be Makabel Tumah, but only because the Zephys is a material which is so weak and cannot stand hot liquids, therefore it loses its whole shem kli and is Torin Gansen. However, the other way of learning this Mishnah is the Rash. The Rash learns, Zephys doesn't mean kelim completely made out of Zephys. It means kelim which have been lined with Zephys in the same way the Reish of the Mishnah talked about a keli with a hole which was repaired by Zephys. Now we mean a keli which is lined by Zephys on the inside or on the outside for purposes of proofing. And the Mishnah, according to this, the Mishnah is now going to carry on and explain what this means. Klei nechoshesh zipson, if one lines a copper vessel with zephys to act as some sort of proofing tahirin, then this proof, we're only talking about the zephys, the lining of zephys around the kli, is not a chibur to the kli, because the zephys cannot stand, same as before, because the zephys cannot stand the heat. Therefore, the zephys is not a chibur, and if the kli is tomei, touching the zephys doesn't make the thing touching it tomei. V'im leyayin, however, if the kli nechoshes is made primarily to store wine, and who had anything cold, the yayin is just an expression for something which is made for cold, and then the zephys is just a proofing, like a waterproofing, to make sure it doesn't be absorbed by the walls of the kli to main. Then the zephys is a chibur to the kli, because there's no heat involved. And if the kli is tomei, then oichel and mashkin touching the layer of zephys become tomei, as if they touched the kli itself. The only thing I just want to mention, which I forgot to say earlier in the Mishnah, is on the word mecham shetiploi. This is in contrast to Mishnah Hey. With Mishnah Hey said, "Atoyfel kli cheres habori," any kli cheres which is strong and healthy, you put a lining of a tipple on it. The Chachamim say the tipple is not a chibur. However, the mecha, where the tipple has a function of preserving the heat, such a tipple, if it's chomer, is bottled to the kli, and is considered to be a chelik of the kli itself.